If you've been watching our series covering Superplay's top 600 Super Nintendo games of all time, then you've probably noticed that I've been including the magazine cover art for every entry. This is on purpose, because Superplay has so many great covers that are worth remembering, even if they're in a teeny box at the bottom corner of the screen. Before we count down Superplay's top 50 games, I first wanted to take a moment to free those issues from that tiny box and rank all 47 covers. Join me as I count down the top 47 Superplay covers of all time. Beyond simply being known as the most comprehensive source for Super Nintendo information, Superplay was also known for their anime coverage. This Japanese influence made its way onto the cover in both the text at the top, and also with the artist giving popular Super Nintendo characters a slightly more anime look. You'll find a lot of examples of this very thing working, but issue 39 is the perfect example of that style going too far. Not even the bear is enough to make up for the terrible-looking hero and his comically large bone and ill-fitting pants. The cover loses points for making an exciting adventure game look bland and lame. Yeah, this is Superplay's worst cover. You know, I struggled with where to put this Christmas-themed issue on the list, since it's more boring than just straight-up bad. But then I realized that it's also lazy. I may not like the artwork created for some of the so-called better covers, but at least there was some effort put into them. Look, issue 15 is like 70% face buttons and a small Santa Claus clinging on for dear life. The gold background is also terrible. The art department was clearly on a rush to go on their winter holidays. You know, I complained about issue 15 rushing the cover, but the truth is that the art department barely even tried in the final year of Superplay's life. One of the worst examples of this is this character from Breath of Fire 2. He's big, muscly, and ready to strike, but the problem is that it's not clear what you're looking at from a glance. You really have to study the artwork to even notice the eyes and shape. And even when you finally realize what it is, there's nothing that immediately connects it to Breath of Fire 2 outside of the helpful text. It also loses points for putting white text on a white background. Seriously, don't do that. The 1996 curse continues with this bland mess of a design. This Nintendo 64 themed cover shows you some of Nintendo's most beloved characters, including Mario, Link, and Kirby. The problem is that there's no real theme here, it's just a hodgepodge of characters. It reminds me of a Photoshop collage, or just really any modern movie poster where it's a bunch of faces and bodies mixed together after the fact. There's just nothing here that sells the audience on the new, exciting hardware. Turning some of your favorite Super Nintendo characters into anime heroes may sound awesome, but there are just so many examples on this list where the recognizable face comes off looking weird and bad. That's the case with Mega Man X, which looks fine until you look at his facial expression. This is a perfect example of the official design being head and shoulders better than what Superplay was able to come up with. The red and yellow big top background certainly doesn't help. If you've been watching Superplay's Top 600, then you already know that the Addams Family is a mainstay on the countdown. Design-wise, this artwork looks more Western influenced than Eastern. Hell, Wednesday Adam looks like she came directly from Bob's Burger. The decision to make Morticia gray is an interesting choice, and I don't even know what the hell they're doing with Gomez. The designs are neither ooky nor spooky, but rather crap and crap. You know, I don't hate this cover. In truth, the Star Fox artwork here is surprisingly close to the official stuff coming from Nintendo. So why is it so low on the list? Honestly, I was hoping for something a little bit more unique. Maybe something more anime. What we get here is basically just a carbon copy of Nintendo's own artwork, only with Fox McCloud's more cartoonish sneer. And maybe it's just my American perspective, but this has the look and energy of those "I want you" for the US Army enlistment posters. Thumbs down, Falco. Ooh, this cover's a mess. Look, I'm all for poppin' Twin Bee artwork, but even the most die-hard fans have to admit that this design is just kinda weird. The game is an action-packed shoot-'em-up that performed well in our top 600 list, but you wouldn't know that based on this cover art. This design makes the game look more like a Sonic the Hedgehog sequel, where Robotnik has been turned into a vampire and couldn't be bothered to put on shoes. Couple that with the potato henchman and the spaceship with a giant fist, and what we have here is a recipe for confusion. Oh, and the whole thing's really ugly too. Honestly, issue 47 probably deserves to be lower on the list, but it earns points for being creative. The truth is, there aren't any other covers like this in the magazine's 47-issue run. It's the way they turned the Super Nintendo into a massive gun and used the cartridges as ammo. The use of screenshots in the background is also interesting, as that's something that you won't see a lot of on this list. It's a daring attempt at something new, which I want to applaud. Unfortunately, the stock character isn't doing anything for me, and the Super Nintendo gun is both impractical and just really stupid. This is the first of many covers where the adventure game hero looks stoically into the distance. We don't know why he's angry, but the clenched fist and determined stare tell us everything that we need to know. Is it drawn well? Sure, but there's nothing here to tell you why Skyblazer is different from any other fantasy game on the market. This is a huge wasted opportunity. I'm not gonna lie, at first glance, I thought this was a Dragon Ball Z cover. Obviously, this is Ganon from the Samurai Shodown series, but you can see how I could make that mistake. This animated-up version looks more like an oddly proportioned Martian than a formidable fighting force. It also makes Samurai Shodown look terrible, which is just something I can't abide by. For as exciting as racing games tend to be, they often make for pretty lousy magazine covers. That's certainly the case when it comes to issue 4, which gives us a random blonde-haired dude who's clearly 3 sizes too big for that car. Beyond being a bit dull, I'm not a big fan of the weirdly shaped hand, and the checkered flag in the background seems unnecessary. Where's the track, the fans, and the other racers? All that would have been a lot more eye-catching than the redundant checkered flag. This was Superplay's first bad cover. What we have here is a variation on the stoic character staring off into the distance. Here, we have 2 expressionless characters, both from Assault Suits Valken. This is a case of Superplay trying to out-animate characters that are already anime, which apparently translates to even more obnoxious hair. The mech in the background may actually be the best part of the design, but it's hard to tell because the guy's bangs are about 80% of this cover. Yeah, might have been better if they toned down the anime style just a little bit. Chun-Li must be the hardest Street Fighter character to draw because so few artists are able to get it right. To be fair to Superplay, even Capcom has struggled with her design. I'll confess that I like this more and more every time I look at it, but I can't shake the feeling that this is amateur hour at DeviantArt. Also, the framing is weird, and what's up with the gray costume? It was a big disappointment. Speaking of disappointing fighting game artwork, here we see Superplay's take on Joe Higashi. On one hand, this suffers from a lot of the same problems as Chun-Li on issue 9. The big difference is that Superplay gets the framing and attack right in issue 19. The jump kick is coming right at the reader, giving us a point of view shot that we rarely see. That said, Joe looks a little weird, and I don't like the red and black background. It's a mixed bag, but better than Chun-Li. Yes, the X-Men look weird as anime characters. I think we can all agree with that. However, there's something about this design that I can't take my eyes off of. I do like how it makes Wolverine look like he's 3 feet tall, and it's clear that Cyclops is doing all the heavy lifting here. This cover feels like it was designed to make longtime X-Men fans cringe. As a Super Nintendo cover, this is a complete failure. However, as a transition to the Nintendo 64, well, it's still not very good. Look, there's no getting around the fact that the N64 logo's taken up most of the real estate. Mario is dwarfed by the wording, forced to float around space pretending to play the Nintendo 64. I say pretending because it's not actually plugged into a television or getting any power. But hey, holding the controller sure looks fun, I guess. Let's move on. If you didn't believe me when I said that the art department basically gave up in 1996, well, let me introduce you to issue 44. What we have here is Superplay accurately drawing Kirby and slapping him on one of the most basic backgrounds you can think of. Hell, there's a chance that this is actually official Nintendo artwork. It's that close. Either way, it's the very definition of middling. It's only this high up on the list because Kirby still looks like Kirby, which is more than I can say about Chun-Li and Mega Man X. Here's yet another example of me not being able to tell the difference between Nintendo's official assets and Superplay's art department. Sure, this is a good-looking version of Mario that seems to combine Mario World, All-Stars, Yoshi's Cookie, and I guess even the Super Scope 6. The problem is the straightforward design, which looks like the kind of thing you would see in all the other magazines. Good looking, yes, but lacking the Superplay personality. I hate to say it, but that Superplay personality is also lacking from the Super Metroid cover from 1994. The brief glimpse of Samus we see are her big, expressive eyes smooshed into the helmet. You'd think there'd be more than enough space since every other part of her suit is comically bulky. This cover gets bonus points for calling her a Riot Girl, but I'm also going to take away those points for not spelling it correctly. They're so close! Look, I'm torn when it comes to issue 10. On one hand, I appreciate that Superplay was trying something new by having Hagar and Carlos in the forefront, while Mackie's very large face looms over everything in the background. This is a lot more eye-catching than many of Superplay's more traditional designs. That said, the characters look weird, and there's something about the placement that makes the whole thing look cluttered. Mackie comes off looking the best here, though. This cover frustrates me so much. It's a weird mix of Superplay's cartoony art direction and that very specific aesthetic found in Yoshi's Island. The pairing makes both halves look out of place and, worst of all, comes off as chaotic. Both Mario and Yoshi are plumped up a bit on this cover, and what's with the eyebrows on that blue villain? There's just so much going on here that it hurts my eyes after a while. This may not be Superplay's most compelling cover, but at least it proves that they can draw a better-looking Chun-Li. One could quibble that this is basically the same design as Chun-Li's first cover back on issue 9. It's also one of those designs that gets worse the more you look at the smaller details. But I think it works overall. I like the angle we see her and what the special move looks like before it's unleashed. The face is a little odd, but this is a big step up from the last time Superplay attempted to honor one of the greatest fighting game heroes of all time. Only Superplay would match Final Fight with Front Mission. Here we see Lucia Morgan teamed up with Lloyd? I might be wrong here, but that's not the point. I would argue that this cover works, but just barely. Even if you don't compare them to their officially drawn counterparts, there's something a little off about these designs. I also think they would have popped more without the sketchpad background. I don't know, the cover is neither good nor bad. It's very middle of the pack, which is probably why it landed at number 24. This is Superplay's final cover before switching over to a Nintendo 64 magazine. The issue tries to go out on a high note thanks to Mario paragliding over the Mushroom Kingdom as if he's in Pilot Wing 64. That's a good enough idea, I suppose, but there's something about this design that leaves me cold. That said, this is one of the better artistic renditions of Mario, who was described as being plump on that Yoshi's Island cover. That's not the problem here, which is why issue 47 lands smack dab in the middle of the countdown. I have to hand it to Superplay for their restraint. A lot of British magazines couldn't wait to put their favorite footballers on the cover. Believe it or not, this is actually the closest Superplay got to a soccer cover, and it features a pink-haired anime girl instead of a well-known celebrity athlete. I think that's why this stylish cover is on the higher end of the list. Look, it's hard to get me invested in a sports cover, but issue 13 comes close to nailing it. How on earth did this Secret of Mana cover rank so high on this list? It's definitely not because of the Randy design, whose face is almost completely lost in all that hair and is wearing the 90s baggiest pants. Seriously, even MC Hammer is jealous of this kid. His pants are that baggy. Thankfully, the two other characters look a lot better, and the jungle background makes the action come to life. It's a mixed bag, but Prim ultimately saves the day. surprising nobody. Here is quite possibly the least Superplay cover in Superplay's 47-issue history. Ooh, this just looks like it belongs on the cover of Edge or Next Generation, where simplicity speaks volumes and mechs represent the future of technology. Hell, this issue's even hyping the 3D effects coming to the Super Nintendo. It's a little plain and kind of boring, but it comes in at number 20 simply because it doesn't look like any other Superplay cover. Now, this is what I expect when you tell me that Superplay is going to feature a mech on the cover. This is a design that allows the artist to draw the anime character and then place them in front of the slightly blurry mech. This cover isn't as polished and eye-catching as the Vortex design that we just saw, but ranks slightly higher because it has all the Superplay hallmarks and cliches. I mean that as a good thing. Mostly. Out of the 5 issues that feature a woman on the cover by herself, this is easily my favorite. I think part of the reason I like this design is because I'm not entirely sure what game it goes to, or even if it's connected to a game. What I do know is that this red-haired woman is wearing a lot of layers, and that's not even including the blue animal on her shoulder, or what looks like a half-dozen accessories in her Valley Girl hair. As 1980s as this whole thing comes across, I have to be honest and say that it works for me. All of it. And I'm not just saying that because she's about a second away from cutting off an important part of my body with her sword. Seriously. And we're back to the stoic heroes looking off into the distance. This probably could have ranked a lot lower than 17th place, but I like the attention to detail here. I don't know who this warrior is, but I can feel their emotion coming through loud and clear. I like the goggles, the sword, the outfit, and the 1,000-yard stare. If I saw this at a newsstand, I would immediately want to flip through the pages. Why is this warrior so angry? Who are they about to fight? The answers to those questions aren't in the issue, but I want to know nonetheless. Issue 30 is a big step up from the last time we saw Mega Man X on the cover. In fact, it's not until you dig into the finer details that you notice that Superplay isn't using Capcom's official assets. The layout here is interesting, what with the good and bad guys on opposite sides of the cover and all the information shoved between them. There isn't another Superplay cover that looks like this, which is probably why it comes across as something that you would have seen done by Ultra Game players or maybe even GamePro. It's fine, but not one of Superplay's best. If you're into random Konami characters hogging the spotlight, then prepare to fall in love with Superplay's take on Ultimate Parodius. This is a mashup cover with recognizable faces like Goemon and Kid Dracula, as well as some enemies and a barely dressed woman riding a missile, of course. Is this Konami's maddest game yet? I don't know about that, but clearly it's a good way to show off the wackiness of Parodius. It's also kind of jumbled together, but there's no denying that this cover is eye-catching. Speaking of eye-catching, that's also the case when it comes to issue 22, but in an entirely different way. Using a cold black and blue design, the Syndicate cover works because it only hints at how great the real game is. It tells us that the dark future is here, all while showing us skyscrapers and a gun-toting man in a mask. It's a striking design that wisely shies away from Superplay's want to make everything bright and cartoony. And the depressing thing is that I actually believe the cover. I mean, when I look at what's happening around me, it's hard to argue that the dark future really is here. Sometimes all you need to do is fill a cover up with a bunch of weird-looking characters and call it a day. That's exactly what Superplay did with issue 23, where they populated their cover with a bunch of good and bad guys from the delightful Kiki Kai Kai franchise. With one-eyed creatures, trees with faces, walking fish, and even a sentient barrel, I totally understand why Superplay would wonder if all this was too weird for the West. Thankfully, it wasn't, and this magic from Japan came to the US and Europe under the name Pocky and Rocky. I recommend you take that card and discover this somewhat obscure oddity. It's somehow even better than this fantastic cover art suggests. While showing off the weird cast of characters may have benefited Kiki Kai Kai too, the opposite approach worked for Chrono Trigger. This is a great example of less is more. Superplay's art department gives us a look at our heroes and the ship, only hinting at the time-traveling shenanigans that they're gonna get up to. Sure, some might argue that this is a little too plain, but I think the Chrono Trigger design perfectly gets the job done, and best of all, doesn't make the cast look foolish. This is one of the few shoot-'em-up covers that actually looks like it's promoting a shoot-'em-up. We get the recognizable ship flying towards a massive boss, which is certainly in the spirit of those classic shooters. I like how the boss is drenched in blue, allowing the greens, silvers, and oranges of our ship to really stand out. This is one of the rare times we've seen where a shoot-'em-up game translates this well to a magazine cover, which definitely goes a long way to explain why it shows up at number 11. After literally spending years trying to draw Mario, Superplay finally gets it right. But it's not the Italian plumber that's interesting here, but rather the incredibly detailed world lurking right behind his shoulders. Celebrating the release of both Yoshi's Island, Mario RPG, and the All-Star compilation, the world behind our hero is full of some of the greatest hits and villains. You can sit here for 10 minutes studying every part of the cover and still not see everything. Yeah, Bowser looks a little rough, but they absolutely nailed Baby Mario. This is one of Superplay's most controversial covers, and it's easy to see why. The goofy way they reduce the characters down to tiny playthings could be seen as disrespectful. But personally, I like the way the design isn't taking itself too seriously. It helps that the massive anime girl in the background remains one of the best characters drawn by Superplay's artists. And the way she's interacting with the teeny tiny heroes makes me want to ask a dozen questions that, honestly, I don't want the answers to. Couple that with the pink coloring, and you have a cover that's actually better than the game it's promoting. Superplay does more for the Super Bomberman lore than any cover possibly could. It not only has a comical explosion, but it also shows us several types of bomber characters, all of which seem to have their own unique personality. If I were a fan that felt like every Bomberman game was identical, then I could see this cover being a game changer for me. It ranks a little lower in my book for making the crass playing with yourself joke, but it's clear that Superplay's artist had a lot of fun drawing bomber people, and that joy really makes me want to play Super Bomberman 3, like right now. It took 31 issues, but Superplay finally found a way to get a great cover out of a mech suit. The trick, it seems, is to mix art styles, making the blue-haired pilot stand out inside of the expertly crafted mech. It helps that the mech itself has a unique shape, forcing us to study it just to see how it would work. That said, I did consider deducting points for Superplay's dishonest use of the name Metal Gear, but the rest of the design is good enough to make up for that misstep. Is this Vampire's Kiss cover a little plain? Maybe, but what I love about this design is how big and imposing Dracula is. This is one of the few covers where the character takes up all the room. Hell, there isn't even enough space to show his body or his shoulders or even the cape. I also like how the blood-red eyes are staring right at the reader, mesmerizing us to read the issue of Superplay. It's simple and probably could stand to be a little bloodier, but this is one of the best versions of Dracula found on any magazine cover. With our heroine atop a chocobo and that white background, this actually looks like it could be a real Final Fantasy cover. This is another example of less equaling more. I love the determination here, not just from the hero, but also from the chocobo she's riding. Best of all, the cover isn't cluttered with a bunch of words and promotions, a problem I have with a lot of the Superplay covers. Simply put, this is one of my favorite Final Fantasy covers of all time, and I don't just mean magazine covers. The problem that Superplay had is that they assumed that a stoic warrior staring off into the distance would be enough to get you sucked into the next amazing adventure game. This led to a lot of well-meaning but ultimately forgettable covers. Issue 24 gets it right with Breath of Fire. This isn't a picture getting ready for battle, but rather a design where we see our hero mid-fight. There's fire raging in the background, skeletons on the attack, and people with long blue hair winning the war. It's just exciting, and it makes me want to play Breath of Fire. I'm telling you, this really should have been the template for all future adventure game covers. This is easily one of the greatest Christmas covers of all time. Bringing together Chun-Li, Spider-Man, R2-D2, a Dragon Quest slime, and a very big cat, and then piling them right next to the Christmas tree is a great way of showing off the fun adventures that you're gonna have with your Super Nintendo. This is also the best Chun-Li has looked on any Super Play cover, and I love how many small details are hidden in the background. This is cluttered in a good way, which is why it's often the first cover that I think of when talking about Christmas. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to celebrate the holidays with R2-D2 and Spider-Man? I've gone back and forth when it comes to the issues that would be number 1 and number 2. Ultimately, I settled on issue 1 coming in second place, but don't get me wrong, it's still one of the best Super Play covers you can get. This is a perfect example of an artist having a lot of fun creating new characters and then making them act like the reader while playing the latest Super Nintendo games. It doesn't matter that she's clearly from a fantasy world and he's futuristic, or that there's a giant dragon just over their shoulder, because the power of gaming brings them all together. There's just a joyous nature to the design that brings me back to when I first got a Super Nintendo, or really any new system. I mean, the cover is so good that you probably didn't even notice a Link standing on the head of the dragon. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. My favorite Super Play cover may not look like much at first glance, but look again because it shows the artists at their most playful. This is a cute and adorable take on the Legend of Zelda, seeing Link and the princess being goofy and just having fun. I like the way they strip Zelda 3 bare in both a literal and figurative way, and Zelda's expression is just pure delight. I love all of this, including the embarrassment of poor Link, who thankfully still has a shield. It's also worth pointing out that Zelda's dress is to die for, and the simple white background makes the character moment that much more striking. Not just great for Super Play, but this is easily one of my favorite magazine covers of all time. Hey, thanks for watching me rank all of the Super Play covers. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, that's New Year's Eve, for the exciting finale of Super Play's Top 600. We're finally counting down the top 50 games, and based on the predictions I saw in the last episode, nobody has a clue what's going to come in number 1. Let me tell you, you're going to be shocked. Or will you? Find out tomorrow. Now here's the question I have for you. What was your favorite Super Play cover? You saw my ranking, so now it's time to pick your favorites. Let me see your choices in the comments below. Ooh, 2021 may almost be done, but we have a whole lot more scheduled for next year, including a new series that we're going to be teasing on tomorrow's Super Play finale. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,